Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Conservatives Cool Talk Radio. This is your host, Wayne Bradley. Thank you for joining me tonight on our Fix Michigan Monday show. The clock is ticking. We are heading to the final week here into the Michigan GOP convention, where we will nominate our Secretary of State candidate and also our Attorney General. So going into this week, I was hoping to get interviews with all the remaining Secretary of State candidates. I can tell you that this is going to be a very tough battle. We have some very good candidates for Secretary of State. I've had the pleasure so far interviewing Cameron Brown and also Ruth Johnson, and hopefully before the week is out, I'll be able to talk to the rest of the candidates. But I think it's really important for people to understand how important this vote is. If you've been following the Secretary of State vote, I'd like to hear what your opinions are and who's your favorite to win here in the Republican primary. Like I said, we have some great candidates: Ruth Johnson, Ann Norlander, Cameron Brown, Paul Scott, and Ann Norlander. So we, like I said, got some great candidates, and at the end of the day, people are going to have to pick the person, not only who they think is the best candidate, because again, Michelle McManus, I'm sorry I didn't mention her either. We have those 5 candidates, and we're going to have to choose someone that can take on Jocelyn Benson head on, because she has raised a lot of money. She's got more money than all the other candidates combined. And again, I think that's something people need to pay attention to. She raised over $500,000, and she has over $410,000 on hand. She's raised almost more money than most of the other candidates combined. So when you're looking at this, you really have to pay attention to how important this race is. A lot of people kind of overlook the Secretary of State race, but not knowing how important it is to monitor the voting system to make sure that we all have one vote, one voice, making sure everything is fair and square. So again, looking forward to the GOP convention this Saturday at the Breslin Center in East Lansing. I'll be back in my old stomping grounds up in Michigan State, so I'm looking forward to that. Give me a call. Let me know who's going to be there. I want to hear from you. Dan, I know you're going to be there. Give me a call. I want to talk to everybody that's going to be up in East Lansing this weekend. I want to hear what your plans are and who you're voting for. I know we got a couple interesting little parties and mixes on Friday night. Ruth Johnson's having one, and I believe also Bill Schuette is. So I hope to see everyone up there. Hoping to have a good time and pick the right candidates. Tonight's show, we'll have Cameron Brown, who is a senator, and he's running for Secretary of State. That'll be my first interview, and hopefully the second interview will be Senator Mike Bishop, who is out on the road right now campaigning, and hopefully I'll get him on the show after he's done on the campaign trail. So I want to thank everybody that's been listening in. I encourage you to go to the website, conservativeiscool.com, check out the blog and all my favorite interviews now. I actually have an interview archive where you can go on there and listen to all my favorite interviews. So that it'll really give you a treat to go back and listen to the conversations I've had with Michelle Bachmann and people like that, and Thaddeus McCotter. And again, I'm trying every week to bring you the best guests that I possibly can to the show, and I want to thank you all for listening. If anybody wants to call in on any of the other issues we got going on here, there seems to have been some controversy also on the whole nominee process and the voting in the Attorney General race. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that with Mike Bishop this evening. My first guest, again, is going to be Cameron Brown. I'm going to go ahead and play that interview. Again, he's running for Secretary of State. Today he just got the endorsement of Terry Lynn Land, the current Secretary of State, so that's big. And we're going to listen to Cameron and see what his vision is for fixing Michigan and what makes him the best candidate for Secretary of State. Listen in now to Cameron Brown, Senator Cameron Brown. Welcome to the show today. My guest is from the 16th District, Senator Cameron Brown. He's a candidate for Secretary of State. Senator Brown, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Wayne. Good to be with you.
Thank you so much. A couple things that are going on here. You've been in a really tight race. Can you first, I want to just clear up, because, we have some blogs out here that are passing bad information. Can you clear up for all the listeners out here the rumors about dropping out of the race?
Oh, my goodness. Some people have some desperate tactics they're using to discredit candidates, especially those in the lead and in the ascendancy in this race. And I think that's what you're hearing. No, we've been in this race since about nearly 2 years ago, and I say we, my wife and I, and we're running a very strong, aggressive campaign. We intend to win. And you know, you win elections like you win friends.
Right.
One person at a time, one vote at a time, and we're doing that in a personal way and connecting with the hearts and minds of people all across Michigan.
Right. If elected to Secretary of State, what would be your 3 top priorities? Well,
first of all, the great challenge that the next Secretary of State will face will be protecting the integrity of our ballot box, no question. And second to that will be to begin the process, to continue the process of keeping costs and fees down. Very important in this day and age when families are challenged. And then just to protect the integrity of our driver's license. And so let me go back to the first one. We are being challenged on all sides.
Okay.
I've been telling people in the phone calling that I've been doing that this election of our next Secretary of State has far-reaching national implications.
Right.
We're not just electing a Secretary of State for Michigan. We're electing one of our 50 states' gatekeepers to our liberty, one of the guardians, the first and foremost guardian of our liberty here in Michigan. And that's the protector of the one right that guarantees all other rights, and that's the right to vote. And if we question that, we have only to look to Minnesota,
right,
where the recent election of Al Franken was presided over by a Secretary of State put into office by Mr. George Soros. He has targeted Secretaries of State races all over the country. He's won 11 of 13. This one is next on his list. And we can't afford to let that happen. So the great challenge will be to be that defender, that guardian of our liberty, protecting against voter registration fraud. I've introduced a package of bills in the Senate, now pending in the Senate, called the anti-acorn legislation.
Okay.
It's modeled after a legislation that's in place in Nevada that their Secretary of State, Mr. Miller, used to prosecute acorn. It was featured on the Glenn Beck show about a year ago, so I did some homework and had bills drafted that modeled that law. It's now pending in the Senate. I voted with Senate colleagues 2 years ago to introduce legislation that really prohibits, I should say, illegal aliens from getting a Michigan driver's license. They can't do that now.
Right.
We'll stand by the law. And then lastly, I've introduced legislation that requires proof of U.S. citizenship when you register to vote. And I hope that legislation moves. And if it doesn't pass in this legislature, I will work with colleagues in the House and Senate as Secretary of State to get legislation in place.
Great. And now, how serious in Michigan is ACORN in trying to manipulate the voting process here?
Well, the question is not so much how serious, but how potent the threat is when you look all across the country at what they have tried to do in other states. We have had incidences here in Michigan of their attempt to compromise our elections. The point is this. Our founding fathers and mothers had a slogan. It's still applicable to us, and I think you and your listeners know what that slogan was. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And those founders didn't say, vigilance for the duration of the Revolutionary War, or vigilance for the time it takes us to get the Constitution in place. They said eternal vigilance because they understood something very basic about human nature. Each generation needs to be on the watchtower and vigilant in protecting our liberties. So the question is, what can we do to be preemptive, to exercise that vigilance? And this legislation pending in the Senate will be a great step forward to prevent ACORN or any group that they might morph into from compromising our elections.
How connected is the Democratic opponent, Jocelyn Benson, to ACORN and people like George Soros?
Well, I think that she is backed by the full faith and credit of George Soros. He's in sync with Jocelyn Benson. He's targeted Michigan. She is his candidate. we have to sound the alarm bell about this election so that Mr. Soros doesn't add Michigan to his winning ranks. And I told people that we need to be like Paul Revere of old. We need to sound the alarm bell of liberty in this generation for this election especially.
Now, I sat in the panel once with Jocelyn Benson and listened to some of her ideas, and it kind of blew me away. She actually wants to open up more buildings, more brick and mortar, and, in the cities and things of that nature. How realistic is that in times right now where we're dealing with a lack of resources here in Michigan?
In terms of branch offices, you mean?
Yeah, she wants to open up more branch offices. She actually proposed to do that.
Well, I mentioned in response to your first question, one of the great challenges the next Secretary of State will face, not only in guarding and protecting our liberty, that right to vote, but also in keeping costs down. I serve in the legislature now. There are times I don't sleep well. I know there's people out there hurting financially, families fearful of losing their jobs. Many of them have. And we need to keep the cost of government down, continue to ratchet that down. And how can we do that and still provide vital services to the people of our state, especially to our seniors?
Right.
We can do that by using our resources wisely. I was in business for 18 years. I come at this from a business sense of how to do things. I will be looking at a performance audit of all of our branch offices in the first 100 days, if privileged to serve, as Michigan's next Secretary of State, and to review all branch interactions to see how we can begin to use best business practices to start bringing some costs down. I will be looking at more automated services at highly pedestrian trafficked areas.
Okay.
I will be looking at more online services and perhaps online interactivity with live human beings. We have one mobile unit right now. We should maybe try to have another if we can get the funding for it. The purpose of that mobile unit is to best serve those that are senior citizens, those that aren't mobile, those that don't have access to the internet. So this is where we should be looking to provide a quality of service second to none among the states, but not automatically expand the costs of doing that business.
Where do you stand on the relatively new voter ID law?
If you're talking about requiring the use of a photo ID,
yes.
When you vote, I stand four square on that. You have to understand, and 2 years ago in the Michigan Senate, in the wake of the Attorney General's opinion that upheld that requirement, I voted with Senate colleagues and worked with them to enact into law a provision that prevents illegal aliens from getting a Michigan driver's license. They can't get it now, and I will stand by the law if privileged to serve as your next Secretary of State.
Do you think fees need to be raised in the Secretary of State office to help, obviously, with the lack of resources that we have?
No, this is, nobody's coming to me as a state senator and saying, hey, Senator, let's raise taxes.
Okay.
This is not a time to do that. If there ever is a time, we need to begin to exercise the best stewardship possible, to work smart and to start bringing our costs down, to live within our means, and provide services in a creative way. I applaud the past two Republican Secretaries of State. They have led us on a path of progress, of innovation in the Department of State. I hope to continue to do that in the manner that I mentioned previously, and that's a cost-saving way, using more online services, automated services in highly pedestrian trafficked areas. But it's not a time to increase fees. It's a time to begin the process to reduce fees creatively.
Right. And what's your stance with this enhanced driver's license that's already in place?
Well, let me respond to that by saying that the Real ID Act is federal legislation, and behind that is the notion that we have to have a national identity card. I strongly oppose the national identity card for the states. I will oppose any attempt to impose upon the people a national identity card. And I oppose any mandate that requires us to add anything to our driver's license, including an RFID chip. I will stand strongly against any mandate to do so.
And for the people that aren't familiar with that RFID chip, can you just explain that, exactly what that is?
Well, RFID is a radio frequency identification device. It's in our passport. You have to now have a passport to travel to and from Canada and Mexico. It's in the optional enhanced driver's license, not mandatory, but those that want to have a combination driver's license passport can get that.
You know, with the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative, how do we ensure that this information stays secure?
Well, whether it's our passport or this optional EDL, the RFID chip needs to be encrypted at the very least. We should lobby our U.S. Congress to make sure that passport RFID chip is encrypted and make sure that at the very least, if we can't get an immediate encryption of that, there should be a sleeve to protect it from being read at any distance. So I will work aggressively with other secretaries of state and with our U.S. congressional delegation, not just here in Michigan, but with Congress as a whole, to begin the process to protect personal privacy information. People are very concerned about the protection of their personal privacy information. I'm one of the lawmakers that introduced a new law that requires protection of our Social Security number. It used to be that in normal business transactions, they'd ask you for your Social Security number when you rent a video.
Right.
For heaven's sakes. And now you can't do that as a result of my law. I don't even always answer all the census questions, those that I think exceed what the Constitution requires of us. So I stand on the 10th Amendment, defending the principal rights of the people of Michigan and the United States.
Great, great. The absentee ballot, for any reason, where do you stand on that?
Well, the Constitution authorizes the legislature to make provision for absentee voting. We allow for that now, but we shouldn't expand it.
Okay.
And I think to expand it to the point where we establish this sense of no reason absentee voting or early voting is fraught with a real potential for fraudulent activity. And I should also say that I think there's something very important to the integrity of our elections in having people vote at a common time, not only from a patriotic sense, coming together as a statewide community, exercising your franchise, casting your vote, but also voting on the same basis of information. In the life of politics, even a day sometimes can be a year. And when you have people voting early, they're voting perhaps or could be voting on a different set of information. What if something should be announced about a candidate that's a critical point of information for voters to know?
Right.
Those that have previously voted won't be able to, recapture that vote and vote based on that new information. So it's important we come together and vote at a common time as much as possible. We shouldn't expand absentee voting beyond what it is now.
Do you think that we need to make any changes to the campaign finance laws, or does it just need to be more strict enforcement of the current laws?
Well, I think we need to enforce aggressively current law. I have pledged to work cooperatively with our next Attorney General to vigorously enforce Michigan's campaign and election law. I think there should always be transparency in this process. Perhaps there should be more frequent reporting, but I think we need to be careful that we don't travel down this road of tightening up so much so that nobody's going to end up being able to run for office because they're going to have to hire a CPA to be their treasurer and their secretary. So we need to be careful that we don't cut off our nose to spite our face.
I got you. Now, what can we do? I live in the Detroit area, and it's always been kind of like the joke about the dead voters. What can we do what kind of safeguards can we put in place to improve the security and reduce some of the fraud that goes on down here?
Well, I think we need to look at updating our QVF, our qualified voter file, more often. We may need to change the law, even federal law, to do that. But there is a practice in Detroit that is unique, right, therefore unique to Michigan and unique among the 50 states. And that is this practice of paying people and groups to actually support and endorse your candidacy.
Right.
I think that's fraught with real legal and ethical problems. So I've taken the initiative to introduce legislation. It's been in the Senate Campaign and Oversight Committee. It's sat there for far too long, and the chair has been asked repeatedly to move this legislation. It would prevent that kind of activity from taking place.
Okay. And who have been some of your key endorsements in this Secretary of State run?
Well, one of the earliest endorsements came from Keith Butler, who endorsed my candidacy.
All right.
Let me also mention that our county clerks are on the front line. They are the frontline defenders of that liberty that we talked about at the onset of this interview. I have the endorsement of Mary Hollenrake, who is Kent County Clerk, Grand Rapids being the second largest city in Michigan. Mary Hollenrake is the immediate past Clerk of the Year. I have the endorsement of Dan Kruger, who is the Dean of County Clerks in Michigan. He is the longest-serving county clerk. He is also a former Republican candidate for Secretary of State and a former past president of the Michigan Clerks Association. He has endorsed me. Patty Bender, who is also one of the ranking county clerks in Michigan and the past president of the Michigan County Clerks Association, she has endorsed me. And the reason I mention these endorsements is because these clerks are looking for a Secretary of State who they can trust, who they feel is competent to administer a 1,500-employee office, department, 144 branch offices, and to work closely with them to ensure that our elections are run fairly, openly, honestly. The Secretary of State is the Chief Elections Officer in Michigan. These very premier county clerks have trust and confidence in my ability to get the job done.
And finally, Senator Brown, what separates you from the other candidates in this race?
The breadth and depth of my experience, both from 18 years in business. I have an MPA from Western Michigan University. I have 12 years in the legislature. All of those 12 years I've served on appropriations. You know, the Secretary of State is to be not only the Chief Elections Officer, but in the absence of the governor and lieutenant governor by the Michigan Constitution, Secretary of State is to be the acting governor. If ever called upon to exercise that responsibility, and Secretary Land has done it at least 6 times, and that with a Democrat governor, I will do so in a manner consistent with my conservative values, but in a manner worthy of your confidence and trust. And just a couple weeks ago, I was invited by the Detroit Symphony on Oakland University's amphitheater campus there to give my tribute to Abraham Lincoln with the Detroit Symphony.
Wow.
2,000 people in the audience. And I have a very strong outreach and appeal in the southeast part of the state and throughout Michigan. So I would say the breadth and depth of experience, the large footprint that I've established in this state for many years.
Great, great. Well, for everybody listening, can you give your website address also so they can, if they want to go look at the website and get more information or support you, they can go check it out?
Yes, I would encourage them, thank you, to visit my website. It's my name with my middle initial. It's Cameron S, as in SamBrown.com, CameronSBrown.com. And I might add there are 6 very short video messages right on the home page. You can link to them. The home page will pop up. You'll see their titles there. You can link to those very short videos, 1.5 minutes at the most. I think your listeners will find them encouraging, patriotic, hopefully inspirational, but they'll give your listeners a strong sense of my values and principles, my conservative values.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much, Senator Brown, for joining us on the show today, and good luck next week at the convention, sir.
Well, thank you very much, and certainly very good to be with you today.
All right. You have a blessed day, sir. That was my interview with Senator Cameron Brown, and like I said, he's a candidate for Secretary of State. Again, it's very interesting. We have some very good candidates. I guess the most important thing is knowing that we have to pick someone that's going to be able to beat Jocelyn Benson. That's the bigger issue here. Again, I'm very comfortable with all the different candidates. You just have to pick. We have to really put our heads together and figure out who's going to be the best, possibly the best competition to Brown. So right now, I'm actually giving a call to Senator Mike Bishop, and hope.
Hello.
Senator Bishop.
Yes. Hello. Hey, Wayne. How are you?
All right. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well.
Thank you for coming on the show. I know you're out on the campaign trail, so I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Sure, of course. Wouldn't miss it. I'm on I-94, headed eastbound. Beautiful summer evening in Michigan.
Right. I want to first, before we get started talking about everything that's going on here, I've seen you have some very big endorsements in the last couple of days, and I want to congratulate you on that.
Yes, thank you. I'm very proud to have received the endorsement of Congressman Pete Hoekstra and Sheriff Mike Bouchard, who have joined the team and have been a great jump start for the campaign.
Great. This has been a very tough battle here for the Attorney General race. In the last week, I think we saw each other at the Secretary of State debate, and we were talking, and I didn't realize at that point we've had some issues now with some of the nominees being denied, delegate nominees. Can you explain that situation a little bit better for people out here listening?
It's interesting. There are a number of folks, new delegates who were elected this past go-around in the primary. We had a great influx of new energy. It was outstanding to see, and Oakland County was overflowing with folks who want to participate, who won their races for precinct delegate and wanted to go to the state convention. And just like a lot of the other districts around the state, we had some issues with voting, and there were some people that were concerned that they weren't being given an opportunity to participate. And there was a fair vote in Oakland County, but the state party decided that there was a challenge. Of the many challenges around the state, the one in Oakland County was the one they were going to pay attention to. So they nullified the votes in 3 different local units of government, and they're going to re-vote all those folks that were elected to go to the state convention were told that they're no longer elected to go, and that they're going to redo the election this Thursday before the convention.
Now, is this something that typically happens in this voting process? Because again, a lot of people might be new to this. Does this typically happen in a primary season?
I've never heard of it happening before. I don't have any historical reference for it to believe that's happened in the past. What really gets to me is that I'm a candidate for a statewide office, and I have a vested interest in this. I'll be fair. I mean, it's just a fact. And, it's just interesting that the party decided to focus solely on my home city.
Right. I was saying it's not just in your county. It's actually in Rochester Hills.
Right. My parents were told that their vote doesn't count. So this hit close to home, and, it's more of the inside politics that goes on. And I just hope that whatever happens in this process, I hope that the state convention delegates go to the state convention with a sense of purpose, that they not let anybody from the party apparatus tell them how to vote or what to do. They've got to go with conviction and a sense of duty to be a part of the future of their state and not be intimidated, because what's going on down here is, in my opinion, unacceptable.
Do you think is it strictly an intimidation factor thing they're trying to put in place, or is it just, again, party politics ruling the day?
Well, I guess I'll never know, and I won't be able to prove anything. But I mean, there were poll challenges all over the state for the same reason. But
right.
for some reason, they decided to apply the rules in my home district, and you know, I just think it's a little coincidental. Maybe I'm crazy, but the reality is that it happened in my home district, and we're just going to have to buck up and go to the convention again on Thursday and get our people to send the people that were originally elected to the state convention. I just don't think it's fair. I mean, this is I wrote this on my Facebook page, but this is, to me, old school Soviet Union politics. When you're not satisfied with the vote, you go in and you just say, "Oh, let's just redo that one."
Right, and you know, to people that aren't familiar with this process or people that are just new to it, you got to think that's a big turnoff to them, and they have to be kind of shunned by this whole process.
And you know, Wayne, that is the problem. There's so many new people that are involved, and you know, when you go into a crowd like this and you ask how many are new, how many are first-time delegates, in almost every crowd, you'll see 75% of the folks in the room raise their hand. And this is what they were exposed to the first time, and it's a real crying shame because we cannot afford to turn people away at the door. We need to embrace everyone who wants to be a part of the future of this state and this country, and if we don't, we're gonna turn them back, and we won't be able to get them to participate. It'd be just a real shame. We need every person we can get to be a part of this.
Well, I hope that everyone's listening out here and, again, begins to ask questions because, again, for someone that's new to this process, I can tell you for a fact, just me as an observer, it's kind of a turnoff to see how, party politics are getting in the way of what the people actually want here. And I think like I said, that would be a shame. Let's focus a little more on just apples to apples here. As far as candidates, what makes you the better qualified candidate for Attorney General?
Well, I've really would say that there are three most important qualities because this is a statewide process of putting our resume on the table and being reviewed for a job. I'm coming to an interview at every place I stop, and we're both Republicans. We both stand firm on those specific conservative issues that people talk about. We're pro-life, we're pro-Second Amendment, where we believe that marriage means one man, one woman. But there are some areas that I think that differentiate us, that make a difference. And to me, the most important is what I think people are looking for in their next Attorney General is a proven leader, a proven conservative leader.
Right.
And I've been in the trenches for the past 4 years, fighting for conservative causes against one of the most liberal machines in the history of our state and probably in the country. And I think people have seen what I'm willing to do and how hard I'm willing to fight for what's right in this state. The Senate Republicans have been the last line of defense for the taxpayers in our state, and I've been blessed to have the opportunity to lead that effort. And we've done, I think, a fantastic job. I really am I'm very grateful for the fine people that I work with in the Michigan Senate who have dedicated their lives to the future of their state. So trusted leadership that you've seen in action and you can count on in the future is important. And number two, experience. To me, the most important thing in this race is having an Attorney General who is able to take on this job on day one. And I'm not talking about the political part of the job. To me, right. The Attorney General's office should not be a political job. We are facing a constitutional crisis in our state and in our country. We need an attorney with that's had experience. And I have been in the private sector longer than I have in elected government. I've represented people, I have families, businesses. I've been a local prosecutor, had a chance to be in the courtroom arguing cases before juries and the court. I feel that I'm ready to take on this job on day one. And one of the first things that you'll have to do is decide how you're going to want to handle this Obamacare lawsuit.
Right.
Both of us want to continue. Both the Republican candidates have pledged to continue that lawsuit. But I'm the candidate who actually can argue the case before the United States Supreme Court. I've been sworn in before the U.S. Supreme Court, and I would consider one of my greatest honors to have the opportunity to take that case myself before the Supremes on behalf of the citizens of Michigan.
And I think that's something that I guess some people don't recognize, is that you're ready to do that from day one.
I am. Experience counts, and it's not politics that counts. It's experience from the private sector that is the difference between the two candidates. And lastly, Wayne, I just want to mention that it goes to electability, too. We need to nominate a candidate on Saturday who can go to the ballot on November and win. It makes no sense for us to put a candidate on the ballot in November and not win.
Right.
The polling has shown that people across the state know who I am, what I stand for. The media has picked me apart, turned me inside out, and vetted me completely. And
right.
For the most part, even if folks don't agree with my politics, they at least know what I stand for, and they know that I'm willing to stand up for what's right. And I think that's the kind of quality person they want in their next attorney general. And all the polling shows that I'm double digits ahead of my opponent.
Great. And can you clear up some of the misconceptions? Because, on Facebook and a lot of these blogs, we get postings. Can you kind of clear up some of the confusion with some people that they have that you were part of the reason why some of these taxes were raised, the Michigan business tax and things like that? Can you clear that up for the people that might not understand exactly what goes on and what you're responsible for and what you fought for?
Well, there's one specific gentleman who has been sending out around he works for my opponent's campaign, and he calls himself a young professional and has drafted a statement that suggests that I'm responsible for the Michigan business tax, and that it was the Republicans that created that tax. It was the Republicans in the Senate who did everything in their power to address the original proposal that was sent over to us by the governor. Michigan Republicans, Senate Republicans, sent over our own replacement for the SBT because we had a responsibility to replace it once it was repealed. Our replacement was actually a $400 million tax cut. And not many people know that, and it's because of folks like this person I was talking about earlier who like to twist the truth. And I just want folks to know that I have done everything in my power to stand up to this governor and the big government tactics of this governor. We have blocked billions of dollars in tax increases. We have sent repeated balanced budgets to the governor without tax increases. We're operating 2-on-1 right now. The House is controlled by the Democrats. The governor's office is controlled by the Democrats. I think we've done yeoman's work on behalf of the taxpayers in this state, and it's a real crying shame that some folks have to use these kind of tactics to try and get votes for their candidate. It does not sit well with those of us who have been in the trenches working hard for Republican principles to be accused of being a part of this governor's machine.
I can understand that, and that's probably like the dirty side of politics that a lot of people just hate to see. What as far as continuing on with the current lawsuit that's going on with Obamacare, how long what will the process be as the transformation goes from the present Attorney General to the new Attorney General? What will have to be done to continue that lawsuit?
Well, if the office has filed the lawsuit, I would file a substitution of attorneys on day one, so that my name is clearly printed on that complaint. I'm a firm believer in the cause. I believe that it's got strong legal standing, and I'm ready to fight it with everything I have, and in my name on day one.
The one other thing, after last week when we were at the debate, Secretary of State debate, we kind of talked about it a little bit, and I just wanted to know, why haven't we had any debates for the Attorney General campaign?
I don't know. The same gentleman that I talked to the same gentleman that organized the debate for the Secretary of State, and I asked him if he wouldn't mind see if he can arrange a debate for the Attorney General candidates. He has since contacted me and indicated that there was no response from the other side. So I stand ready, willing, and able to do that. I think it's important that we spend the time with the public to air it out in a transparent way to see where we stand. My opponent also said that he would put his financial records out in the public so that we can all see. I have done that. I think that's right, that everyone sees my financial records to see that I have no conflicts of interest, that I personally honor the role of the Attorney General's office, and I think it's important that we lift any cloud, any concern about our personal records that would impugn the integrity of the office. And so I'd like to publicly debate my opponent. I'd like to see him publicly put his financial records on the table so that all can see. It's important for the people who are going to vote on this, and I'm concerned that we haven't vetted all these things prior to this vote on Saturday.
Yeah, and it seems, to be honest, it looks to me, through some of the news reportings I'm doing, that actually the Democratic Party is doing a better job going after your opponent than actually, within the party as far as the vetting process is going. That's kind of like the concern, is that once that's over, they start playing actual hardball at that point.
Yeah, they will. I can assure you that the Democratic Party will tear the Republican Party apart. And if you've got a voting record, if you've got anything in your past, anything at all, they will pull it out and they will wrap it around your neck, as they have always done in the past.
What's the rest of your week, your schedule looking like here on the campaign trail?
Well, I will spend a lot of the week making phone calls, talking to delegates individually. I'm also going to be doing a teletown hall meeting this week with delegates on the phone. It's we've talked about this before, but it's a neat technology that allows me to talk to delegates all around the state at one time.
Okay.
And I'll be conducting live town hall meetings with delegates around the state as well. As many as I can do. This is hand to hand now, and as many folks folks out there that'll talk to me, I'm going to talk to them, and I'll be all over the state.
Excellent. Would you say that right now, and just from my observation, would you say that right now your opponent would be considered the party candidate, and you would be considered the people's choice as a candidate? Would that be a fair analogy, the way of looking at it?
That's the way it has played out. It shocks me to think that, because I've been nothing but a soldier for the Republican cause. But I haven't collected the endorsements of some of these folks, and I haven't gone out and pandered to the status quo out there. And I just don't think it's necessary. My message is directly to the delegates who are the grassroots of the party and who are the future of the party, and I will put my best foot forward and do whatever I can to show people who I am and what I stand for.
All right. Well, can you give people listening in the website address, and give them any information, like I said, if they can help out in any kind of way, making calls, phone banks, or anything? Let the listeners know if there's any way they can help you out, Mike.
Well, the best way to help out is to contact our website at mikebishop.com and click on the volunteer button that's on the page. We're organizing an effort. We're going to be doing statewide calls. Any way that people can help me speak directly to delegates is extremely helpful. And, it doesn't matter how hard I try, and I tell you, I will do everything in my power to call people, but I just simply cannot get to everyone. And it means more to folks out there in the delegate world to hear from people they know, neighbors and friends, that they can vouch for me and tell them why I'm the best candidate for the race. If people are willing to do that for me, it's extremely helpful. And I'd also suggest that if they go to the website, you can click on the video portion of the website and see what I've done in the Senate, the leadership that I've shown in the Senate. I've got videos of floor speeches. If people want to know where I stand and my thought process and my philosophy about issues. I hope that they check out some of those floor speeches, especially on the issues like pay increases and the size of government. And I think your conservative crowd will agree that you need people that are strong and forceful and willing to stand up for what's right. And I believe to my very soul that I've done everything in my power to stand up for those conservative principles.
That's one thing that we didn't talk about, and I'll just ask about that too, was the pay raise issue, because I think that again was something that a lot of people brought up and tried to murky the waters a little bit on where you stood on the pay raises. Just you can clarify that, maybe also speak on the difference in opinion between you and your opponent on that issue.
I voted against every pay raise. I've had floor speeches and impassioned floor speeches on every attempt to raise pay. Been very public in my position there, and you can again listen to the floor speeches and see my votes are all online. The difference, in fact, I actually voted to reduce the pay of legislators this past go around, and have led the charge to reduce the benefits as well. There's just no way that we can sustain the cost of our employees in this state. Public officials have to be the first to step up and be leaders in reducing the size of government, and that's just a fact. It's got to happen. My opponent didn't do that.
And I was reading that your opponent actually felt at the time that one of those pay raises were merited, or they deserved that. Was I reading that correctly?
Yeah, my opponent back in 2000, there was a proposal for a 36% pay increase for elected officials. The State House rejected. In Michigan, you have to have both chambers reject the pay raise, or it goes automatically into effect. That's the way it used to be. We've since changed that, so it's an opt-in rather than an opt-out. But back in earlier this decade, it was an opt-out system, and the House, when I was in the House, we voted against it. It went to the Senate. They sat on it and didn't vote on it at all. And many of the Senate members were, not only did they not vote for it, but they were vocally supportive of this pay raise. My opponent said that we need to increase pay because we won't attract good and qualified people to the job. And that I find very offensive, because I never got into this job for the pay. I left a job in the private sector that had much better upward mobility in the middle of my earning years, and it's never been about the pay to me. And I do believe that people will line up for my job because they would be honored to serve in the legislature. So it's not about the pay, and I think that it goes to the philosophies of the two of us in this race.
I agree. Well, I'll say first, from a personal standpoint, getting you on the radio show, you've been very accessible. You're one of the few people I can call just on my cell phone and say I need you to come on the show, and I really appreciate that. Again, it kind of speaks to the level of you working with the people. I'm not a big radio show or anything like that, but you work with the people, and I think that people need to understand that.
Well, I appreciate that, Wayne. You're a good man, and I appreciate people that are willing to participate and talk about it. I will always be available and look forward to working with you in the future.
All right. Well, give them the website address one more time so they can check that out, and I'll let you get back on the road and have a safe trip, okay?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's MikeBishop.com, and you can visit that or visit me on Facebook. Would be great. I'd love to hear from you.
All right, Senator Bishop. Well, I'll see you probably Friday evening or definitely on Saturday morning at the convention, and I'm looking forward to it, sir.
That's outstanding. We'll talk to you soon, Wayne.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining us. Have a blessed evening.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was Senator Mike Bishop joining us tonight. And, again, I want people to understand I think both candidates are good candidates. You just have to it almost scares me to the level of party support that one candidate has compared to the other. And when you look, like I said, I talk to people from the political side of things, the people that are at the top of the GOP, and I talk to the people on the grassroots level as far as Tea Party folks, and it's almost a night and day difference in the way they feel about these two candidates. And again, that's why I think it's important for everyone to listen. I wish we could have had some kind of debate, because I can't help but think that wouldn't make some sort of difference in listening to them side by side on the issues. I've spoke to both candidates myself, and again, I think you have to look at all the different sidebars to this issue, because these are both extremely qualified candidates. But one is obviously the party favorite, backed by pretty much everyone through the Republican Party and all the different prosecutors throughout the state. He has a lot of support amongst the political party. And again, to me, when I talk to all the Tea Party folks and people across the state that are considered the grassroots folks, they have the support of Senator Mike Bishop. So it's going to be a very interesting election process coming up this week. They'll do the retake on Thursday for the 9th District, which is my district, and we'll have the convention on Saturday in East Lansing. I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully before the week is out, I can get a couple more interviews with all the other Secretary of State candidates. Again, today, Cameron Brown was endorsed by our current Secretary of State, Terry Lynn Land. I believe Ann Norlander got she had an endorsement today from the Republican Liberty Caucus. So again, we got some really good candidates here, and it'll be interesting going through the week is to see how they connect with these delegates and where they end up voting on Saturday. This is a big week, and we're heading into the final stretch here. I want to thank Senator Brown and also Senator Bishop for joining me on the show today. It was truly a pleasure. Again, what people we need to pay attention to is the fact that we have leaders that are communicating with the normal folks out here, the people. I'm not some media giant. I am just a normal guy that goes to these conventions and goes to these debates. And I walk up to these leaders and ask them, can I sit down and talk to them? Can I bring them on the radio show, again, to ask them questions simple questions, the same questions that you might have, and I always suggest that you send them to me so I can ask them. But again, this is about providing a service and getting the answers for the people, because I think that's what they deserve. I think we need to have an educated forum on all of our candidates, making sure we understand the people that we're choosing to be our leaders in a position like this, an Attorney General position. This position is not supposed to be a political position, so seeing that they're doing these recount votes and things of that nature, and again, in Mike Bishop's own county, you really have to wonder about how many political statements and things that are working in the background. And I hope that all the delegates that are listening to this, again, think about your vote. Like I said, Bill Schuette's a good guy. Mike Bishop's a good guy. You just have to decide for yourself who you're more comfortable with, and who's gonna deal with it from fighting for the people, and dealing with it as such. So again, I want to thank Mike Bishop for coming on tonight. I want to thank Senator Cameron Brown. I want to thank everyone that's had any involvement that's come on the show and talked with us about how we can fix Michigan, because I truly believe that these conservative candidates that I've brought on the show are some of the best minds and have some of the best ideas of what we can do to get Michigan back on track. Quite simply, for the last 8 years, we've had some of the worst leadership and some of the worst ideas that you could possibly have, and it reflects again with our economy and in our unemployment rate here. So we're moving forward. Hopefully, we're going to reinvent Michigan with Rick Snyder, who I hope to have back on the show again. Looking forward to having him on next week. Hopefully, we can get Rocky to come back on the show. So. Again, I want to thank everyone that's listening in. I want to encourage you to go visit the website, conservativeiscool.com. Check in on our blogs and the polls. Some of my new features, the interview archives, where we have, again, added, some of my favorite interviews, everyone from Alan West to Michelle Bachman to Thaddeus McCotter to Pete Hoekstra. Mark Lamont Hill, he's come on there and duked it out. I'm trying to bring him back on there. So, again, what I'm trying to do is to bring the voices of conservative voices to the show and speak to the people, because sometimes on these on mainstream and the larger media sources, they just don't ask the questions that the people want to know. And so again, I encourage you to send me any questions you think I should ask these candidates, whether it be through email, and that's at twitterfam@conservativeiscool.com, or while we're on the chat lines, I want to say hello to Summertime And Sirius wants to know, listening in on the chat room, how you guys doing? Thank you for listening to the show tonight. And Summer Night says I'm 100% behind Mike. Make sure you post that interview so that I can post it podcast online. Mike needs our support. All right. Well, make sure you send me a message so I can post that interview to you. That's no problem. If you're on Facebook, my Facebook page is Wayne is Conservative Bradley. Is Conservative is my middle name. So go on there. We can join up and be Facebook friends. And you can get all my most recent postings from all my interviews and all my thoughts on what's going on in this crazy world out here. We're going to go on tomorrow night and do some national news because I think we got a lot to talk about as far as these mosques being built. We've had some new proposals for other mosques being built in other areas, and we're going to talk about that because I want to make sure that we understand that here in America, though you might disagree with some of the things that are going on, we do not need to get into a position where we're denying every mosque that needs to get built here in America. The whole issue with the mosque being built near the 9/11 site is strictly based off location. They have a legal right, obviously, to build that mosque there, but common sense, again, is what I'm asking for in that scenario. But I ask that people not use that one situation and begin to use that as a reason to complain about every other mosque that's being built throughout the country because people, this is America, this is what makes this country great, and so people have the right to worship the way they want to worship, and if they want to build a mosque in Tennessee, where I believe is where I was seeing one of the, another mosque, a mega mosque as they proposed it to be, I suggest people fall back, let people practice their religion. It's no different, in a situation like that in Tennessee. It's probably no different than any of the mega churches that are being built. And I don't hear people complaining about that. And again, I'm a Christian, but also I believe in the Constitution and I follow it. And I believe if you're going to give people freedom of religion, you can't pick and choose. The only issue I have with the 9/11 mosque is the location. I think that a lot of people, feel the same way. If you just moved it a little bit, no one will complain about that development. You might get a better land deal somewhere else, but I just feel like that location is just not a good location for that mosque. It has a lot more to do with the families, the families of the victims and the sensitivity to that. And I think that obviously Muslims are peace-loving people, and hopefully that through their determinations and talkings amongst themselves and internal discussions that they will figure that there's a better location, because that's the only issue I have with that, and I want to make that clear. This is a great country, and we need to celebrate the fact that we have our religious freedom and allow people to practice their religion. But again, have a little common sense about the scenarios and some sensitivity to the victims of those families. So tomorrow night we'll talk more in depth about that. I'm going to probably put a rant on the website on Conservative is Cool about that, because again, I think that I don't want us to go too far with this whole idea of complaining about people opening mosques in different areas. They have a right to. I just think that the 9/11 site was just a bad location. So moving forward, hopefully people will join in on that discussion tomorrow night. And I'm looking forward to it. The call-in number is 347-996-3175. So I look forward to hearing. We'll do a whole show about that tomorrow night. I want to again thank everyone that's listening tonight. Thank all the guests that came on. Fix Michigan Mondays. I'm looking forward to the convention this weekend. I'll be bringing my hot wife with me, and we're going to go and enjoy the convention this weekend. So I want to say happy birthday to my mother-in-law. I need to give her a call. Today is her birthday, and we're going to enjoy the rest of this evening. I want to turn on a little football and watch what's left of the game. Thank you, everyone that's following me on Twitter. My Twitter address is WB Conservative, or you can look up Conservative is Cool on Twitter, and you'll find me. We hit over 18,000 followers last week, so that means a lot of people are listening in and are following and listening to a good conservative word. So I want to say thank you, and I appreciate everyone that follows and all my friends and followers on Facebook and Twitter. And next week, again, I got some big announcements coming up. I don't want to let the cat out the bag yet until I know exactly everything's formalized, but we're going to be doing a lot more to help conservatives, in particular urban conservatives, push their agenda in places that they're not getting the support. All I can tell you right now, but Thank you for listening in to Conservatives Cool Talk Radio. This is your host, Wayne Bradley, on Fix Michigan Monday, saying thank you, good night, and God bless you.